room. And Jean was already talking about being the Canadian guy in the room. So as I'm looking around the audience and seeing all kinds of old hands, we can trade stories. Remember that time in Mykolaiv and all that sort of thing? People that have been around Ukraine for quite a long time. What I really want to do, and I'm one of those people, by the way. It's 20 years, 4 out of 5 presidents. I've been either visiting, working in, living in, or doing business in Ukraine for pretty much most of the time that Ukraine's existed as a state. So what I want to do for you today is just to talk a little bit about, and in 2 incarnations, by the way. My most recent one is, some people call me the vodka guy, because we actually import vodka, beer, wine, spirits from Ukraine. You'll have a chance to try those. And we actually even created a couple of vodka brands that we have manufactured for us in Ukraine. So that's the fun part. Before that, my life was advising companies. We started up what's now actually one of the largest private consulting firms in Ukraine called EBS. And we advised a lot of foreign multinational companies and other companies that were doing business in Ukraine. And that was way back when. That was back in the mid to late 90s and early 2000s. That company's still going strong. So I want to give you some context. And this is sort of like one Canadian person talking to other Canadian people. And I know that there's lots of people here who know a lot about what it's like in Ukraine. And I know there's a ton of people here who are just curious. They are kicking the tires. They're looking at Ukraine and saying, this seems like some kind of opportunity I should check out. So that's the kind of context I want to give to people who are really looking at Ukraine. And you've heard a lot of things. It's a big country. It's the size of France. It has a population larger than Poland, a population larger than Canada. It's incredibly literate, incredibly professional, very skilled people. This is an amazing opportunity. And I can tell you from somebody who's been kicking around a long time, when they say Ukraine is changing, I can tell you that is absolutely true. It has never been like this before. And one of the first things I always learned was that if you're going to take advantage of an opportunity like this, it's kind of like being late or early for the train. There is no such thing as being right on time for the train. You're either early or you're late. And some of us were really, really, really early for the train. But right now the whistle's blowing. And if you're hearing that, it's time to jump on board because the train's going to leave the station pretty soon. But I want to paint a little picture for you for a second, because Ukraine this year in August is going to celebrate its 25th anniversary of independence. So I want you to imagine a country 25 years after it was formed, and I'm going to describe it. It was born of a large empire, formerly a vassal and a colony. It was fought over by 2 great European powers for a number of centuries. It has a fledgling but flourishing civil society with a new and imperfect democratic institutions. There is a parliament which is renowned for its feistiness and even the occasional brawl. Most of the population is not realizing their potential and doesn't have the wealth they desire, while a few clans of oligarchs control much of the wealth and power in the country. It was born of 2 opposing linguistic groups and cultures, one of which considers itself under threat of extinction. There is a neighboring superpower with a very similar culture, but is massively more powerful militarily and has a much larger population. And it's rattling its saber and making belligerent sounds and even invading from time to time. And there are those who doubt its long-term viability. Will it continue to be independent? Will it be torn apart by linguistic strife? Or will it just end up being absorbed by its more powerful and populous neighbor? Now, you probably think I'm talking about Ukraine in 2016. I'm not. I'm talking about Canada 25 years after its confederation in 1892. Think about it for a second. On the plus side, if we were to really take that comparison further, Ukraine has a flag and a national anthem. We didn't get that for another century. But so you can say when things are changing, you can see that in our own country, things are changing. And then in 25 short years, the state of Ukraine has managed some pretty miraculous stuff. And yes, it's been backwards and forwards, but it's extraordinary that a country that can achieve that much and deliver itself into statehood so quickly. And some of the threats that it faces right now are the very things that are forging its identity and forging its unity. So sometimes there's a silver lining to those clouds, and I think we're going to see that happening very soon. So I want to share with you a couple of things that I learned when I was there. First, don't be late for the train. and because they do leave on time in Ukraine. But if you are really early for the train, everybody here knows there's a thing called a train party. You have a lot of fun on the train, so it's okay if you're early, but don't be late because you'll miss out. The second thing I want to share about Ukraine is that this is a country that has extraordinary history and an amazing link to Canada, and no other country has the goodwill and the history that we have with Ukraine. And we also have the largest diaspora in the Western world of Ukrainians living in Canada, 1.2 million people. I mean, the reason they call Edmonton Edmundchuk is because there are so many people that have that as the last syllable in their name. Because that city is about 17% Ukrainian Canadian. So we have this amazing bond between our two nations and this embarrassingly small amount of trade between our two countries. Now we have a country that's changing, a free trade agreement. We have these links and ties between us. Now's the time. The whistle is blowing. It's time to get on board. You know, in 22 years, and this is another thing I would say, and this is probably true of anywhere, but the biggest advice I always gave people at EBS, when I was at EBS, and we've followed our own advice, thankfully, in the long run, is always be really, really, really diligent and careful about who you pick as your business partner in Ukraine. Because even way back when, in the mid-90s, we picked a business partner who is still a close friend of ours, still runs the business that we co-founded, and it was nothing but good things happening to us. And I see that with other business partners, even in the times that were a little bit more dodgy. If you had a good business partner, things were going to turn out okay. And and we did the same thing with our vodka supplier. We did a tremendous amount of due diligence. It's been a decade and 2 years, 12 years now, that we've been working with these people. And every single year we get closer, we're closer friends, we have an ever-growing partnership with them. So you can really succeed, and the most important thing you need to succeed is making sure you get people you can trust and people that you like, because you're going to end up spending a lot of time together and having a lot of fun together. So that's the key thing. But I want to conclude by my favorite analogy about Ukraine and Ukrainians. Or metaphor, I should say. It's more of a metaphor. There's flowers that grow in the Carpathian Mountains of Ukraine called Pidsnizhniki, which means under the snow. And what happens every spring is that these flowers poke their way through the snow, and their little petals come out, and they start looking at the sun, and the beautiful little blooms, like suddenly this barren landscape, there it is, these little blooms coming out. And almost inevitably, it snows a couple more times, right on top of these little blooms that came out of, and they're covered up again. Guess what? They come back out again, there they are again. Snows again, there they are again. Snows again. Those blooms are still there. And I can tell you this, there is absolutely no way that after Maidan, after Orange Revolution, there is absolutely no way that Ukraine is ever going backwards. It is a free and democratic country permanently, and that's never going to change. So those Pidsnizhniki that get snowed on every now and then that keep coming back, guess what? When the snow does finally melt, they're still there. But here's the other thing about the Pidsnizhniki. They don't last very long. They're a lot like our trilliums here in Ontario. They show up in spring, and then they're gone. So it's springtime. The Pidsnizhniki are here. The snow is melted. It's time to have a look before they're gone. So that's my perspective on Ukraine, so hopefully that is of use to you.